Thank you and welcome you for running this webinar. So we are all here today to discuss the effect of digital transformation in the government sector and to talk about it and share our views. We have 3 panelists today. Okay, who will be sharing with us their experience in different areas, and we'll be talking about the digital transformation challenges and how we can help promote the digital acceleration in the government sector. So today we have Suhail, Devesh, and myself, Rania. Suhail and Devesh.
Good morning, everyone. We look forward to a interesting session with all of you.
Thank you, Suhail. Thank you, Devesh. So before we start, okay, I just would like to bring in some housekeeping notes for the audience. We want to have this session in an as interactive as possible, so please feel free to interact. Write anything you wish on the chat box, wherever you want. And we will have the dedicated question and answer round, okay, to answer your question. During the entire webinar, we will be recording the session and it will be shared within the next 48 hours. So we appreciate your feedback on the conduct of the webinar and want to make sure that we speak relevant topics. For that, we would hope that you provide your feedback towards the end of the webinar, and thank you very much. So now we would like to share the agenda of today. We will start with an introduction, and we will be talking about the challenges in the public sector and main challenges and the relevant use cases. Then we will end with the question and answer at the end of the webinar. So I would like to start with a small introduction. So as you all know, in today's post-pandemic era, uncertainty is on the rise. Government organizations need to embrace the new reality and change their modus operandi, okay, which is the need of the hour to enhance space among the citizens and residents in Qatar. This brings needs for the government to come closer to the citizens and residents for bolstering their services towards them. In order to do that, there is a necessity of government organizations to take quantum leaps, okay, in their digital transformation journey, ensuring that they are ahead of their peers in the private sector, as they are directly responsible for nourishing the growth of their citizens and residents. So we all know that Qatar is very ambitious and want to bring forth state-of-the-art services to its citizens and residents while contributing to the Qatar National Vision 2030 and become much happier and progressive country. So before we start with our topics of the day, I would like just to take a very fast poll question. Okay, where I would like to hear about, okay, what does digital transformation mean to you? So, Hel, what do you think that most of the answers would go for?
I sure hope that they will go for option C, building a citizen-resident-centric approach. Let's see how the attendees will respond to this. That will be an interesting result that I'd like to see, so we can actually maybe change the discussion a little bit to convince them with my point of view.
And on a traditional organization, I would say they will go for option A or B, but okay, looking at Qatar as a progressive country, I hope that they go for option C.
Let's see. We have a couple of seconds to go, and let's see what are the results.
So I'll hand over to you, Suhail.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so 60% have voted for option C. That's encouraging, actually. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning to you all. the result of the poll actually is quite encouraging. So at least we have a majority who perceive the digital government and the transformation as building a citizen or a resident-centric focused approach rather than just provisioning e-services or automation of backend. Probably option C would encompass all of them in a more interconnected approach and with a holistic strategy for a digital transformation rather than discrete implementations of technology. We cannot talk about digital transformation or the need for digital without actually reflecting on the new realities that we are facing today. So the realities we are facing is that after the COVID, it became a reality to everyone that digital is a must. Not a good to have, not an item that you can take away from your budget or you can even try to start negotiating. Different sectors in the economy were impacted in a different way based on their readiness and their ability to cope and their business model. Governments are not immune to this either. So governments are part of the enterprise and the private sector. They were hit as badly as everybody else, whether it's working from home for their employees, lack of access to physical interaction with the citizens, residents, or the private business. And for the interest of this discussion, governments should treat their citizens and the residents and the private businesses and even other government entities who interact with them as clients, as a customer, so that they can serve them in that mindset. So I will be referring to this group of front-end users, the citizens, the residents, the private businesses, and the other government entities as customers in this discussion. So as we can see, for example, some businesses surged in this new economy and this new reality because they were either enablers of digital services, like the technology companies, or who benefited from the COVID circumstances, which is not relevant to this discussion now, the pharmaceutical industry. Others needed to just merely adjust their business model, but they continued to provide the service. The impact and the hit was not significant, like the banking sector, consumer goods. Others were actually badly hit and they need to reset and reflect on their business model as a whole, like the energy sector, travel, hospitality sectors. And finally, there is another division, part of the economy, including the government sectors mainly. Most of the governments in that area fall under this category, they need to transform to re-emerge as with a different business model. They could sustain for a while, but they need to transform in order to get to the right level. Mainly auto industry, insurance, and probably most of the governments who offer some sort of e-government services. Some governments who don't have any or insignificant services online and stuff like that probably will fall under the hard reset. But for Qatar, with all its initiatives like Mawarid, like Mirsal, like e-government, Hukumi, Mitrash, it has enabled a significant amount of services, but the digital transformation and digital government is way beyond just e-services. So we believe that Qatar also falls in this category in the left lower quadrant. However, with the smart initiatives that Qatar is going through, like TESMO and other smart initiatives that are being developed by the government, we can see Qatar easily jumping all the way to the third quadrant while leading and becoming a fully digitized government and providing digital services across in a different approach and different mindset. A digital government is not just e-government services, as we said earlier. It is just actually a journey from e-government towards a smart government, a government that can interact, connect, reflect on the feedback, on the actions, behaviors, be able to predict and analyze the behaviors and forecast what's needed in the future, what can be offered as well, and stay always in touch and in contact with the end users. We envision that this new digital government, which is actually connected with the citizens and the residents and the private businesses all throughout the journey, we coined this as a connected government. The main objective, of course, to improve the lives of all end users. The government has a front end which interacts, or front office that interacts with the citizens, residents, visitors, even their own employees and other government organizations. This can be done with the digital age through different outlets, kiosks, mobile apps, tablets, portals, maybe other means of digital communication that could be achieved or obtained. Then the focus should continue. I mean, in the front office, you should focus on the user experience. how the user is interacting with the applications and with you, how many clicks is the user needs to make in order to get the service that they are looking for. Are they dropping the service? Are they continuing? Are they getting frustrated? How they are reacting to these services? How many services do we have offered today versus the next? Versus what we actually people need, and the priority of those services. Then we can go to the middle office. We should look at also optimizing the performance and the services, keeping in mind that it is all around serving the customer in the best way, fastest way, and guaranteeing customer satisfaction, just like how private business would behave. So we should, in the middle office and back office, there should be a focus and there should be an overall strategy that focuses on customer experience throughout, in the products, in the service offerings, the timing of the offerings, experience of the service delivery, how much does it take, how long does it take, how do I deliver the service? Let's assume that I need to deliver something that needs approval. How long does it take? Where does it go? I need to interact or integrate with a third party to facilitate the service, whether it's QPost or whether it is another government entity where I need to get, for example, some more details or information about this citizen or this resident, that before I can approve or process the request. Then finally, this data should be also, this will give me a rich amount of data that I need to be able to predict and analyze and focus on, and I can interact with my end users in a different way, smarter way. I can be able to, again, foresee their needs and show them that we know about them and how we can serve them better. This is the future of the digital government. It's no longer e-services or e-government applications that we just do requests for a renewal of your ID or a license plate. It's way more than that. However, with all of that comes a lot of challenges. There are technical challenges, there is people challenges, there are process challenges as well that come with this in order to change and converge towards the digital government. The top ones are probably predictable to all of you. But the details of each one of them will be the discussion of today's session. Improving productivity, focusing on experience and citizen centricity. That's a very important one. COVID challenge will not touch on it today, but it is part of the drivers towards the digitization and the change. The ability to provide remote working for the government employees while maintaining the quality, the service, the productivity. That's another challenge that governments will face. There is, after the COVID, and the natural behavior of each government and each enterprise is to try to optimize the cost. And because of the digital needs, we should focus also on the security of and the privacy of the customer data and the government data. With the digital age, this is a challenge that we should all pay attention to and should be always in the core of our design and our strategy to make sure that there are no breaches whatsoever and to gain the trust of the end users. For today's discussion, we're going to focus on the top four, which is basically enhancing the productivity, enhancing the user centricity, improve the security and privacy, and increase the cost optimization and efficiencies. Probably the enhancing productivity and increasing optimization and efficiencies, they come hand in hand and together. So my colleague Davesh will be probably discussing both of them together. The use cases will feed into each other. It's going to be one discussion on both of them. My colleague Rania will talk about user centricity, and I will talk to you about the security and privacy in the government sector. We look forward to your feedback and your thoughts on this, and if you think that this is actually a priority or that the challenges we have identified make sense to Qatar. So please share with me we have a poll right now that I would like to see your feedback on that. And if you agree with us that those are the top priorities and challenges that face the government, or if you have other thoughts that probably are more relevant to Qatar, we'd like to hear from you. I definitely look forward to a very interesting discussion and interaction and questions from you. Thank you very much. Rania, off to you.
Thank you very much, Sohail. So now we will just wait to see the answers from the audience. So what do you think, Sohail, where our most answer would go?
I would go for A. I agree that it is those are the most important challenges, but let's see what people would say. If there are other ideas, I would look forward to seeing them actually. So what is the result? Okay, 100% agree. Great. So
that's very good.
We are on the ball. So that's a good sign that at least we understand the challenges, and we have identified the top challenges that any government and as a matter of fact, any enterprise faces. Rania, I hand it over to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll start with one of the challenges that Sohail was talking about, which is how to enhance the citizen-centric experience. Okay, so mentioning this, I would just like to say that earlier, okay, the government, it was only one-way engagement where government used to put their projects, put their beliefs, without getting back to the real-time feedback from the citizens and residents. So now I believe that the citizens and residents' expectation from government is changing. They need more contribution in the decision of what are the services to be conducted, to be given, and how they are provided. So I'll just come to some statistics that were done by the KPMG. This was a KPMG survey conducted across the globe. So I'll start that 76% of human and social services organizations view customer-centric strategy as a top priority, but only 40% claims to provide customers experience that exceeds expectation, and only 29% of the government indicate they have a clear business vision and strategy, which leads to 55% of customer-centric strategy objectives are focused improving customer experience. That's to say that only 50% of the government entities have a strategy on improving the customer experience, and the rest don't even have a strategy in place. So that being said, I just would like to share what's the client expectation. So 70% of the public think that it is very important the government need to provide more services via digital channels, and 50% of them, they believe they prefer to have an access to government through their smartphone as being the trend of the day. Okay, and it's the easy where they can just reach their services through only one button. This simply makes sense, as citizens are the ones whose lives are already impacted by any decisions and policies made by the by the government. So 90% of citizens believe that government should match or exceed commercial service levels, and the government organizations need to embrace two ways of communication and have collaborative relationships with their citizens, on the decision of the services and how it's being provided. So that takes us to the next, where I just would like to share how it was the traditional government works and what's the new vision of government services and where we want to reach. So as you can see in the shift of today's world to be citizen and resident-centric, as you see, here we have two quadrants. On the left side, you can see the typical and traditional government, and how they used to provide services where individuals have to reach out to each individual government entity for receiving a service. For example, for health, they have to go for the health website, for labor, for education, for social services, justice, and so on. While the need of the hour and the need of today is to focus on centralizing the operation and transfer into government organization and the need of today is that we need to centralize the operations and transfer into government organization, with citizens and residents centricity being the need of the hour. So as you can see now on the right side, citizens and residents can receive all services irrespective of what they want in single click of a button. And to focus on customer centricity means, and that's what we are looking to have in the future. And I would like to bring here, what Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, once said, the best customer service is if the customer doesn't need to call you, doesn't need to talk to you, it just works. Okay, so that would be the motto of customer centricity behavior. So we want to concentrate on providing the services to the citizens and residents without them bothering too much and being able to reach the service in the easiest way. So I just would like to imagine if we have, in health, that if we could consolidate and make sure that all patient information is captured, centralized, and accessible across the country. Okay, so that using the power of the advanced analytics, healthcare professionals would have been able to proactively serve residents and citizens in such pandemic. And they would have taken early proactive actions like knowing who are the residents and citizens that need extra care or have a chronic disease, and they can serve them in a better way or give them the early precautions that they have to take in place. And I would like to give a very successful example of customer centricity services, which is Finland. Finland has launched their centralized government portal where 92% of the government facilities and services to their citizens are provided through a single button. And we have to mention that, as you all know, that Finland is the most advanced country of digital government services. So that was about the customer centricity and our view on customer centricity. And I would like to hand over back to Suhail to talk about the rest of the challenges. To you, Suhail.
Thank you, Rania. Thank you very much. Hello again. So Rania mentioned the most important focus of this, which is the front office, about the customer centricity and the focus on the customer experience. The other important part that should be focused on across the whole journey of the customer is the data security and privacy. This is an issue that has become an important topic to everyone. All governments and entities have had concerns about it, and there are lots of breaches that we hear about and the challenges that all enterprises face across the world. Before we start in this discussion, please, if you have any questions that you'd like to post, please post them in the Q&A chat, and we will address them in the end of the session, inshallah. I think the discussion will become more interesting once we feel you have your feedback and we can respond to it. So the challenges in the privacy and in the public sector and the security across actually is been a challenge that's been identified by many government entities. For example, 32% of government respondents and organizations said they don't have effective, they are not as effective in managing the privacy and the technology in their departments. $47 million is the value of the personal data that was lost from a government entities across the world in 2018. And probably this is a low number because not many governments will disclose the actual loss and damages. The number of infected systems in government entities is probably 3 to 5 times more than the global average, which is a very big challenge. The global investment in cybersecurity across is 124 billion. However, on the global governments is 17 billion. So we can see the disproportional investment from the government, and that this should increase and the focus should increase. Again, for 14% almost of the incidents of compromised data are in government entities across the world, which is not proportional to the size of the government entities compared to the whole global enterprises. If anything, these are warnings that we should all pay attention to and focus on. And with the day and age and the security is becoming the paramount factor, and it is unfortunately now sometimes mitigated or influenced by political positions and governments, we should focus and pay more attention to that aspect to protect our customer data and the government data. In order to mitigate that, we've looked at what could be done from a cyber and privacy approach. And we believe that there should be a government cyber framework that governs the whole cybersecurity and privacy policies and conduct across the government. So it should be part of the strategy and the governance from the beginning to prevent any cyber infringements. So you have to keep it in mind while you're doing the strategy, putting your governance structure. When you're doing any transformation projects, you should have the cyber and privacy as part of the whole program, of the processes, to make sure that it is always covered, it is always mitigated, it's always considered in your design and your project. You should be able to detect cyber attacks and any breaches as soon as possible. So you have to have the means, the capabilities, the people, the resources, the tools. And finally, is also to be able to respond if an infringement or a breach has happened, to be ready and to respond in a very fast time, have the right team, the right tools, the right capabilities, and to be able to actually do the forensics in order to analyze the risk and where it came from. Qatar actually is, again, since this is a government focused on the government, has actually very good capabilities in this area. Different departments within the government have the capabilities, and there is an overall framework that governs how they work together and how they address those challenges. But this needs to be enhanced and be factored into every government initiative and every strategy towards the digital transformation. So with the solutions that we are proposing to be included, and the outcome of that would be, first of all, having, for example, 360 dashboards. Managing identity as a service is a very interesting concept that could help the government and secure the logins and secure the access to the data. Cloud security and resilience, it is relying on cloud services and relying on capable third parties to support you with that. Having an automated risk management for tracking the risks as well, and having third-party risk teams, for example, for SOC and NOC, etc. And having benchmarking annual or regular against other entities and other enterprises to see where you fit. And one of the most important factors is having a learning program for the employees to make sure that they are aware of, they are cyber savvy, they understand, they don't, because many of the breaches happen because of human error. So we should be focusing on that. And also having a data privacy management lifecycle, which is a very interesting topic I'd like to touch base on a little bit here before we jump to something else. So probably two of the ideas that I would like to touch on is probably the identity as a service. Identity as a service is actually a very interesting concept that can help with a single sign-on, control who accesses what. We can capture and trace everybody's activities, the data they access, where they've been, and it will give us the ability to control and figure out if there are anything that goes wrong from any user, or any breach of somebody's credentials will be immediately identified. The second point that I'd like to focus on is actually the data lifecycle management. There should be a framework and structured policies and procedures around how we deal with data, who captures the data, who owns the data, who's the custodian of the data, and who manages this data, who has access to it, and how we can use it and get rid of this data even. So this is the data residency. Where does it stay? On my servers, on the cloud, in Qatar, outside Qatar. These things should be all governed and controlled through a global or a government-wide framework that everybody abides by. We start with the data collection. So how do we collect the data? Where does the data reside again? Who has access? How can we analyze and synthesize this data? How can we use this data in our reporting, in our processes, and in facilitating a service to an end user? And the storage of the data, and of course, while we are processing the data and synthesizing the data, we should look at the data classification, data labeling, data cleansing, data enrichment. These factors are very important in how we qualify our data. Finally, how do we get rid of our data that we don't need? If there is a data that is purging the data, we don't need this data. This data is redundant now. So how do we get rid of it in an efficient and right way so it doesn't fall in the wrong hands or doesn't stay on a server somewhere unattended to? These are the main guidelines that we should have in the minds of whoever is designing or overseeing the digital transformation journey for the government. The outcomes, of course, of such framework and such solutions would be that we'll have a resilient data structure, we'll have a We have control over access. We have a resilient data structure. We have a resilient procurement and supply chain with third-party interactions. We make sure that it is actually secure, that whatever data we share with others is under proper control. We have ability to respond as fast as possible to incidents and to detect incidents and foresee potential incidents as well and detect them. So this is a holistic view on how the privacy and the data should be treated. It should be an intrinsic part of every step of my digital transformation. It should not be an oversight or a good to have or something that we think of an afterthought. Otherwise, we will be jeopardizing the whole data privacy and security, and we will lose the trust of the end users, and the initiatives or the intentions of increasing the digital interaction with the citizens will be impacted, and we lose their trust and credibility. So this thing requires people's awareness and people's being on board. We need to have processes to manage that and make sure that the processes are abided by. And finally, technology to enable these how we can govern and control our data and protect our data. Having said that, I would like really to hand over this now to my colleague Devesh. Please, if you have any questions about the data, about the customer centricity, what we have said before, please go ahead and share them on the questions and answers, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And again, thank you for your time. Devesh, up to you, my friend, to discuss the remaining two challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Suhail and Rania. That was a very insightful session, I must say, right? So moving on to something which I'm sure everybody on this session can resonate with. It's all about enhancing the productivity and finally focusing on optimization, right? Now, when I say optimization or enhancing productivity, let's focus on the word optimization. Pretty much everyone has their own interpretation, right? So before we proceed with this session, why don't I open a quick poll where we get your thoughts on what does optimization mean to you, right? I'm really looking forward to actually receiving some answers from your side. So Suhail, what do you think would be the quick general answer from the team? What would be they looking at? Now, in this case, I feel improving the digital landscape is something that we should consider, but rhetorically speaking, government organization focus on point number A and B, reducing budgets and workforce.
I think the point D will encompass all of them. So let's see if people see that in that perspective and see digital as a full holistic approach rather than discrete activities or object KPIs that are achieved here and there. Let's see. I'm very keen to see. I hope that people will agree with me, so we can at least then this session is going in the right direction. If they disagree, then I didn't do a good job convincing them. Let's see how that goes.
Let's see, but it's all about changing the mindsets at the end of the day, right? So that's the reason why we're here.
Absolutely.
So let's see. A few more seconds, and wow, I was expecting something like this. Yes. So yes, it's all about reducing budgets from decommissioning to improving the digital landscape. But to notice, majority have actually gone for point number D. So I think we've done a decent job so far.
Now it's our job and your job to sway the remaining 50% to our option D. Let's see how we can manage that. Good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Thank you. I'm glad that there are some minds who focus on option number D, because that is exactly what we'll be focusing here. Traditionally, we focus on reducing budgets as a means to optimize, right? So now let me take you to the future. Let me paint a picture. It is the year 2030. United Nations has done a poll, and it emerges that Qatar is the best country in terms of happiness, in terms of citizen centricity, and in terms of resident centricity. Now, how did that happen? So let's take a step back. It is about workforce enablement. At the end of the day, you are providing your workforce adequate means to make decisions, to act on those work rather than spending time in doing the work. This is the core concept when we talk about enhancing productivity and optimization, which not necessarily means cost cutting or reducing the workforce or decommissioning technology. It's about improving our digital landscape, having a right operating model. Now, on your screen, you must be seeing 4 quadrants on the left-hand side, which focuses on 3 different paradigms of technology, or as we call it, 3 different classes: robotic process automation, intelligent automation, and finally, cognitive technology. Now, as you see on the bottom left, there's a concept around human labor with the technology arrows intercircling, right? What does that mean? All these technologies meet together at one point where you are, as I quoted, enabling your workforce. And remember, this is what we are going to be focusing on today. Now, remember the picture that I put. Qatar has been nominated as the best country in the world in terms of happiness, in terms of citizen centricity. The three classes of automation: basic process automation, enhanced process automation, and automation using cognitive technology. Just to give you a bit insight of cognitive technologies, you have, for example, concepts like natural language processing, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so many other technologies. Some of the examples that we will be taking in the next few slides, right? Let's focus on class one, the basic process automation. And again, the image that I put in your mind, let's take a back step, right? When we're talking about becoming the best in the world, what exactly are you looking at? You're also looking at consolidation. Some of the consolidation examples that I can took is centralized procurement, centralized tendering for the government, right? So imagine when you're consolidating such activities, what is the bare minimum that you need to focus on? Data and manual work. You cannot have a large workforce to focus on the data just because you're consolidating your procurement or your tendering departments, right? And that is the need of the hour. Not all government entities can have different procurement or different tendering processes. They need to be centralized. And when they are centralized, the amount of paperwork and the manual intensity of doing that work increases humongously. So, like I said, would you have more people to do that? The answer is no. The solution to that is potentially putting together bots or cobots in your environment. Putting them would actually decrease the amount of work that people would have to do, rather than you have enabled them with a decision support framework. Instead of them putting the files, they are actually going to be working on that, right? And this is the kind of workforce enablement that we need to focus on. And this is why we are talking about basic process automation throughout. Moving on to advanced process automation. Now, with the recent pandemic and COVID, and we do not know where the future is foreseen, there will be multiple challenges. For example, one of the core things that people like you and me would resonate to is, in need of any help, we like to call somebody, and that somebody could be a potential call center. Now, imagine a scenario where all the government organizations are working hand in hand to improve the customer centricity. You cannot afford to have every customer service to actually be independent. They need to be consolidated. Imagine a scenario where instead of having multiple call centers be getting called onto, you have one call center which cuts across every government service, including healthcare, including judiciary, including policing. So all of that comes to one, but you cannot imagine a scenario where when they come and merge into one, you have a plethora of people answering calls. No. So what about automating, again, intelligently, that entire call center process, that the basic questions that you're reaching out to are answered by intelligent bots? And that is the scenario that we want to plug in, because at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, it is all about workforce enablement, which leads into enhancing productivity, user centricity, and finally optimization. Moving on to the third class, which is very near and dear to me. It's about cognitive automation. It's about embedding the use of advanced analytics into your jobs. And this is the ultimate area that we want to focus on. You empower the system to take decisions for you, enable you by pre-built decisions so that you take on advanced stuff in your daily life. One example could be healthcare sector, right? Now, imagine a healthcare sector where government are proactively working towards ensuring the benefits of the citizens and residents, making sure that they are protected from future foreseen pandemics, based on centralized repository of the patient information. The system is able to predict, based on their transactions, what would be a potential problem for a citizen or a resident. And this is where the focus of the discussion has been, right? How does government come closer in a much more advanced manner to their citizens and residents. A common concept of this is that this is purely IT, and this is where I want to draw a line and say no. It is not about enabling IT. IT focuses on the technology part, but such a transformation can cut across different levels of government organizations, and some of them which we foresee as to be centralized for enhancing the optimization and productivity. Some of them could include human resources, customer support, compliance, finance and accounting, supply chain, procurement, fraud and data validation, and end of the day, all of this merging into citizen engagement, right? So with that said, I'm looking forward to discussing more use cases in our question answer round, and hopefully you've taken some interesting points from this, and I'm glad to talk to you about that. Over to you, Sahel.
Thank you, Devesh. Just to sum up everything and bring it into perspective. So the future model for a digital government as we see it is actually government-wide operation and strategy that connects the front, middle, and back offices together. So the front office should be customer-centric and the transformation should take place in that direction. The middle office should focus on enhancing efficiencies and performance in the supply chain and the procurement on all the supporting services. And finally, in the back end, we should concept that we've coined as powered government, basically getting rid of all legacy systems, relying on the cloud solutions and new technology, cutting-edge technologies, and optimizing the back-end processes, ERPs, etc. To achieve this, of course, we need three main enablers, let's call them, actually enabling the future workforce. So to prepare our future workforce to be able to use technology, be very familiar and be able to use automation, augmented reality, mobile solutions, remote work, and to be able to be efficient and productive using those technologies. Making sure that we maintain the privacy and we have proper governance across the data and the information to make sure that we continue to have our customers' trust, and we have a governance around that, and make sure that the assurance and integrity of our processes, of our data, of our service is always intact and always ensured. Finally, and again, the topic that we cannot live without and we cannot dismiss at all is the cybersecurity. We need to make sure that cyber is always as part of every step we make and every process, every design, every technology that we use, and every step, it is always considered and accounted for, and we are looking for the possibilities of any breaches while we are designing our solution. So given those, we will end up with what we call the connected government, which will probably, which we hope that will provide the right framework for a digital government and taking the journey towards a smart government with a very happy and content end users and satisfied who have trust in the data, in the government, and trust their data with the government. So this is probably the summation or summarization of what we tried to say today. I hope that it makes sense, and it is not an easy task. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of collaboration and probably an oversight from a government entity to make sure that it is spread across all the government entities in the right way and in a seamless way as well. So having said that, I would leave it to now for the questions and answers, and to my fellow panelists, Devesh, Rania, and Diala, to see if there are any questions or any points that you'd like to ask and answer. Okay, there you go. So, okay, there is a question about many entities refuse to share their data due to security risks, which affects many projects which depend on their data. What do you recommend to solve this? Devesh, would you like to take this, or shall I start and you take it from me? What do you like?
So here, we'll start with you, and then I'll add on to whatever I can.
Okay, so again, this is a very interesting subject, of course. Similar to any entity, even not government, they are very cautious and very careful to protect their data, to make sure that it is secure. It's not, the access to this data is governed by proper policies and procedures, even inside the organization itself. Now, in order to get over this problem, we need to have a data governance framework and structure across the government that governs the relationships, what data needs to be shared and how it is shared, and which means whether it's encrypted, whether it's centralized in one repository that people with certain authorities can access. This needs to be part of the This will drive me actually to something that I wanted to say maybe in the later questions, is that probably to have a one governing and design authority that oversees how we manage the data across. So data is part of of the enterprise architecture, the digital architecture of the whole framework. It's not just about technology or process or people. Then this new pillar that's called data has to be governed in the same way. I think similar, like MOTC has done a good job in probably overseeing certain initiatives across the government. Let's say Mersal or Mawarid. They became the custodian of the data, but they managed the security and the privacy of the data for the different government entities. Maybe something similar, but a little bit more complicated, that there is a layer that oversees the access and the control. So it should be a government-wide initiative, driven from top down with the policies and the procedures, and making sure that there is a very strict rules around how the data is handled and is managed. But the need to interact and the shared data between government entities is essential for a proper functional digital government in the future. Davesh, please.
I think, Suhail, you covered it absolutely well, because I think the agenda in hand is how does government come closer to the citizens' residents, right? Because that's the picture that we're painting. The example that I took, 2030, Qatar becoming the best nation in the world. How does that happen? Not by working in silos. It's working together hand in hand. At that point, what I want to focus is the service delivery framework that Suhail mentioned, and more importantly, to have the right operating model. And this is where, MOTC or the likes of the other government organizations need to come together, embrace that digital enterprise architecture, make sure you have the right operating model, the right processes, the people, the governance structure, supported by the underlying layer of technology to focus on that. If that's not done, we are still in the age-old area where each government organization would be focused only on the services that every siloed government would be working, right? So please, I think hopefully this is where we want to focus on. So the key messages are having the right operating model and having a service delivery framework.
There is another question. There is a question actually not listed here, but it is on the chat I'd like to discuss. Is having all the processes automated is risky, isn't it? So processes change frequently, which require to have specialized professionals to change the automated process. Yes. But in the concept of process, it should be that it is actually a reliable process that is being tested and it's being thought through. So if there are exceptions, there are scenarios, should be able to accommodate them rather than being one very high level process, very rigid or not inflexible. So this probably will drive, again, as part of the operating model that Devesh was referring to, is that to have a detailed processes across. So to handle the exceptions, the need for it, there should not be much need for to change the process as frequent as you assume. Of course, there are sometimes unexpected circumstances, like what happened to us during the COVID was unpredictable. But usually, we should be able to handle all the scenarios and have a process to handle all of that. If it doesn't, then it is a learning curve. While we're doing the digital transformation, we keep on adding them. Yes, we will need some people's help with the adjusting the automation, if there is a talk about RPA or about AI, that will, but this is the beauty of it, that you can change it, accommodate it, and then the AI should learn from that and will help us in the decision making in the future and to have more processes to cover different scenarios and different tasks. So yes, it will require, but it needs, that brings me to an important part, is before you start the digital journey, you have to have a very clear vision, very clear strategy, and then very clear objectives. And based on that, you start gradually building detailed processes, detailed procedures, detailed framework, structure. Then the technology and the actual transformation takes place. Again, as Devesh said, technology here is an enabler, is a tool. The value and the trick is actually having the right futuristic processes that are adaptable, people who are willing to use this technology and these processes and interact with them in an efficient way. And finally, and the most important thing is to have the right processes and right approach to attract and keep the citizens, the residents, the end users interactive and connected with me. And that's why we call it the connected government. I hope that this covers this question. I don't know if Rania, Devesh, you have some more thoughts on that?
I want to add to this, mostly on the second part of this, where we are focusing on the question's second part, which is, do we need to have specialized professionals to change the automated processes? I want to take a step back from here. A process has a life cycle, right? From the definition of the process to having the governance of the process around it, But how do you measure the effectiveness of the process? You need to have some kind of KPIs, right? So it is not that the process will keep changing. You need to have a process owner who would be focusing on the KPIs to make sure the effectiveness of the process is done. And when we are embarking on the digital transformation process, as we mentioned, there are three categories or three classes that you focus on: the basic, the intermediate, and the advanced, right? So you talk about use cases here, and these use cases would require some amount of business enabled and meshed with technology. Now, when we do this digital transformation, as we were focusing on the concept of operating model, you obviously will require to upskill the people. It's not just about having some other people, professional people coming and working in your environment. It's about having the right skills. And this is the need of the hour, because the technology landscape, the digital landscape, the business landscape is changing as we speak. We do not know what is going to happen even in next year, because there's so much change that is happening in the world. With that said, so you need to have the technology, you need to ensure the process of upliftment, and you definitely need to make sure that the workforce is enabled, empowered, and more importantly, the learning curve is always there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question, which is, what are the KPIs for government organizations who are embarking on their digital transformation journey? Again, let me take a stab at this. So I think in a high-level perspective, to answer this question is, the government should think, behave, and act as a private sector. So assume that you are an e-commerce entity. Let's say you are the Amazon of the world, and you should focus on the customer experience. So basically, the KPI should be around how many users I'm having, how many clicks does it take to conclude or deliver a certain service, or to reach a conclusion for the end user. Are they aborting? Are they getting frustrated? Is there a lot of requirements being asked? How are we dealing with that? So we should, for example, when is similar to the e-commerce again, when is the shopping cart being is being dropped or discarded, and nobody is continuing the process? So we have to look at all of this. Look at the time of the day, what services they are accessing, when are they accessing them? Is there any pattern or behavior that's governing that? What services that have the most need for? So we can prioritize. We can make sure that certain services are always enabled versus others that could probably be good to have in the future. So it's all about managing the customer interaction. Those should be the KPIs. Should be exactly behave as a for-profit e-commerce site that focuses on attracting more customers, keeping them and having them come back for the service, and rather than going physically to the government entity or trying to go through other channels. I think this is probably in a nutshell, in a high level, what would answer, in my opinion. Of course, KPIs about the people performance within the entity, etc., are very important for the in-government entity to manage it, to judge itself and gauge itself. But the main driver, because we are a customer-centric entity, should focus on how satisfied the customer is and how they are interacting with us, how often, how frequent, and how they are, if they are abandoning any of the services, finding it any complicated in any way. We can smoothen the process. Does it take a long time to deliver a certain service? How long does it take from receiving the request to closing the request? These things should be our governing criteria in general, to make sure that we have a successful digital transformation and a connected government. That's it from me. If there are no more questions, I think we are a little bit beyond 11. So I'd like to conclude this session and thank you all for your attendance. Rania, Devesh, Diala, please.
Thank you very much, Sohail and Devesh. I believe that I don't have any more points here to add. Diala?
Are there more questions, Diala? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sohail, Devesh, and Rania, for your insight. It was a really interesting session. Thank you all for attending. See you in our next webinars.
Thank you. Hopefully, we will have a useful session, and we look forward to seeing you again, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
طب اسألي جوبي تعرفون دفاتر شو في هون